The ballroom in Lagos sparkled with golden chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, spilling light onto polished marble floors. The air smelled of roses and expensive perfume. Waiters in white gloves moved across the room, balancing trays of champagne glasses that sparkled in the light. It was a wedding straight out of a dream. But then the groom, Chidi Okeke, grabbed the microphone and pointed at two people sitting quietly in the corner. "Look at them," he said with a cruel laugh. "Rags for clothes and scraps for shoes. And these are the people who raised my bride. What a disgrace." Laughter rippled through the hall like poison. The bride, Ngozi, stood frozen at the altar, her heart shattering into a million pieces. Her parents, who had given everything for her, sat with their heads bowed in shame. But what happened next would shock everyone in that room. Would Ngozi stay silent and marry the man who humiliated her family, or would she do something no one expected? Ngozi wasn't born into this world of diamonds and silk. She grew up in a small town in Enugu State where her father, Samuel, worked long hours fixing cars, and her mother, Patience, took sewing jobs to keep food on the table. They didn't have much money, but they had love. They sacrificed everything to send Ngozi to school, to give her a chance at a better life. When Ngozi met Chidi Okeke at a business event in Lagos, she thought she had found her prince. Chidi was a billionaire, the kind of man every magazine wrote about. He was charming, handsome, and powerful. He drove expensive cars and lived in a mansion in Ikoyi. When he asked Ngozi to marry him, she felt like the luckiest woman in the world. But there were signs she ignored. Small cruel comments he made about people who weren't as rich as him. The way he looked at her parents when they visited, like they were dirt on his expensive shoes. Once, he told her quietly, "Don't let your parents embarrass me at the wedding, Ngozi. They don't belong in a place like this." Ngozi had brushed it off, thinking he was just stressed about the wedding preparations. Now, standing in this grand ballroom in Victoria Island, surrounded by 200 guests in designer clothes, Ngozi watched her parents walk in. Her father wore his only suit, a little worn at the edges but pressed as neatly as he could manage. Her mother's dress was simple blue cotton, one she had sewn herself with trembling hands. They weren't dressed for this glittering world, but they walked with quiet dignity, their eyes fixed on their daughter with so much love it hurt. Ngozi's heart swelled with pride for a moment. The ballroom, the chandeliers, the whispers, none of it mattered. Her parents were here. But then she saw Chidi's eyes narrow. The best man handed him the microphone for his welcome speech. Chidi cleared his throat, and the room fell silent, waiting for his words. "Today," Chidi began smoothly, his voice rich and confident, "we celebrate love, success, and family." People nodded, already charmed. Then his gaze slid to Samoa and Patience, and his lips curved into a cold smile. "And look," Chidi said, pointing directly at Ngozi's parents with a mocking gesture. "Here come the proud parents of the bride." Ngozi smiled faintly, thinking he was about to praise them. But the next words shattered her world completely. "Rags for clothes, scraps for shoes, and these are the people who raised my bride. What a disgrace." The room erupted in cruel laughter. Some guests hid their smirks behind champagne glasses. Others whispered loud enough for Ngozi to hear every painful word. "Did you see his shoes? They look like he walked through mud to get here. That dress, chai, it looks like something from 20 years ago. How embarrassing for Chidi. No wonder he looks ashamed." Ngozi's chest tightened. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Her father's shoulders stiffened, his weathered hands trembling at his sides. Her mother lowered her eyes, clutching her purse as if it could shield her from the humiliation. Ngozi wanted to scream, to defend the people who had sacrificed everything for her. But the words stuck in her throat like stones. "Chidi," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Why would you say that?" He didn't even look at her. He smiled at the crowd, soaking in their laughter like it was applause. The cameras flashed. Phones recorded everything. The humiliation was now permanent, burned into videos that would spread across social media before the night was over. Ngozi's world tilted. Her heart pounded so loudly she couldn't hear the music anymore. She thought about her father, who worked his hands raw every day so she could go to school. She thought about her mother, who stitched clothes late into the night just to make sure Ngozi had shoes on her feet. They weren't perfect, but they had given her more love than all the money in this room combined. And Chidi had just mocked them like they were nothing. One guest leaned toward another and said loudly, "If I were her, I would just disappear." Those words hit Ngozi like lightning. She turned to her bridesmaid standing nearby. "Please," she whispered urgently. "I need a moment." Without waiting for an answer, Ngozi lifted the hem of her white gown and walked quickly down the side aisle. Her veil hid her face, but everyone could see her shaking shoulders. The whispers followed her like dark clouds. "Is she crying? She can't handle it. I knew this marriage wouldn't last." Chidi watched her leave with a smirk on his face. He tilted his head like a man in complete control. To the crowd, he said smoothly, "Nerves, ladies and gentlemen. The poor girl isn't used to big occasions like this." They chuckled again, believing every word he said. But Ngozi wasn't crying. Not yet. She was furious. Her whole body burned with anger she had never felt before. She pushed open a side door and found herself in a quiet hallway. The music from the ballroom was muffled now, like a bad dream fading into the distance. She pressed her back against the wall, gasping for breath. Her mind raced with painful thoughts. She could go back inside, pretend everything was fine, endure the whispers and shame for Chidi's sake. Or she could walk away. Her hands clenched into tight fists. She thought of her father's face, tight with humiliation, his strong shoulders hunched like a beaten man. She thought of her mother's downcast eyes, the way she clutched her purse like it was armor against the cruelty. Ngozi couldn't let this happen. Not to them. Not to herself. She lifted her gown and walked further down the hallway. No one followed her. No one cared enough to check. In the ballroom, chaos slowly stirred as guests began to notice the bride hadn't returned. Minutes stretched into half an hour. The whispers in the ballroom grew sharper and crueler with each passing moment. Phones buzzed with messages as guests started posting online. Billionaire's bride walks out before vows. Some guests began leaving, shaking their heads in disappointment. Others stayed just to watch the drama unfold like a Nollywood movie. By the time an hour had passed, the ballroom was split between chaos and curiosity. Chidi's smirk finally began to falter. He sent his best man to search for Ngozi, but she was gone. Vanished into the busy streets of Lagos like smoke disappearing into the air. Her gown, her veil, her vows, all left behind like broken promises. The wedding was no longer a celebration. It was a scandal that would spread across every blog and newspaper in Nigeria. For the first time that night, Chidi Okeke felt something he never expected. Panic. His perfect image, his carefully planned wedding, everything was crumbling. Gossip spread like wildfire through Lagos and beyond. Where is Ngozi? Did Chidi Okeke drive her away? At first, Chidi laughed it off, spinning the story to reporters with his rehearsed charm. She was overwhelmed, he told them with a sad smile. Poor Ngozi wasn't ready for this kind of life, but I wish her well. Many people believed him at first. But whispers have a way of growing into storms. One business partner pulled out of a major deal. Another stopped returning Chidi's calls. Then came darker rumors about fraud, shady bank accounts, and investors who had been cheated. Nothing concrete at first, just shadows. But in the world of Nigerian billionaires, even shadows can destroy a reputation. Chidi slammed his phone onto his desk one night in his Ikoyi mansion, pacing back and forth like a caged lion. Cowards. All of them. They think a little gossip can shake me. From the leather chair across the room, his mistress Amora Nosu crossed her legs, watching him with cold amusement. It's more than gossip, Chidi. People are digging around. Reporters, investors, business partners. They smell blood in the water. Chidi spun toward her, eyes blazing with anger. Then you fix it. You have connections. Make calls. Remind them who I am. Amora arched an eyebrow. Remind them, or lie for you again. Chidi, let's not pretend. I didn't sign up to be your cleanup person forever. You promised me security and power. Where is it now? Chidi's jaw tightened. You have it. Just stay loyal to me. But Amora leaned forward, her voice like ice cutting through the air. If you fall, Chidi, I won't fall with you. Don't ever forget that. While Chidi's empire began to shake and crack, far from the bright lights of Lagos, Ngozi sat in a quiet guest house in Enugu. She was no longer the trembling bride in a wrinkled white gown. Her hair was tied back simply, her face calm, and her eyes sharper than they had ever been before. Across the table sat an older man in his 60s with grey hair but sharp, intelligent eyes. His name was Chief Emeka Okafor, her grandfather's oldest and most trusted friend. Chief Emeka laid a brown folder on the wooden table between them. Ngozi, your grandfather knew this day might come. He prepared everything for you. These assets, these company shares, these property deeds, they're all yours now. He wanted you to have real power, not Chidi. Ngozi hesitated, her fingers trembling as she opened the folder. Inside were documents she had never known existed. Company shares, property deeds in Abuja and Port Harcourt, bank accounts with money she couldn't believe was real. Tears stung her eyes as the truth hit her. He never told me about any of this, she whispered. Chief Emeka's expression softened with understanding. He didn't want you to marry Chidi at all. Your grandfather saw through him when the rest of the world was blinded by his money and charm. But he also knew you had to learn the truth for yourself. Now that you have, it's time to act. Ngozi closed the folder and sat back, the weight of her grandfather's wisdom pressing heavily on her chest. He mocked my parents, Chief Emeka. He humiliated them in front of everyone. And I found out it wasn't even a mistake. It was planned. Chidi wanted the whole world to laugh at us, to shame us into silence. Chief Emeka's face darkened with anger. Yes. One of his former staff members came forward with information. Chidi bragged about it before the wedding. He said he would break you, weaken you, make you so grateful to stand at his side that you would never question him. Ngozi's hands curled into tight fists on the table. Her heart ached, but anger steadied her voice. He thought I would bow my head. He thought I would be too ashamed to fight back. Chief Emeka leaned closer, his eyes searching hers. So, what will you do now, my daughter? Ngozi's eyes burned with new fire that hadn't been there before. I'll do what he never expected. I'll rise quietly and carefully. And when the time is right, I'll take everything from him. The weeks that followed were quiet for Ngozi, but deadly for Chidi. She worked with lawyers in Abuja, digging into contracts Chidi had manipulated over the years. She met with private investigators, collecting solid proof of embezzlement and fraud. Each step was slow, careful, and hidden from public view. At night, she replayed Chidi's voice in her head. Rags for clothes, scraps for shoes. Each memory of his cruelty sharpened her resolve like a knife being sharpened on stone. But Ngozi didn't just want revenge. She wanted justice. Not only for herself, but for her parents, for every person Chidi had trampled on his climb to wealth and power. One evening, Ngozi met her childhood friend Obiajili in a small restaurant in Enugu. They sat in a quiet corner with steaming bowls of pepper soup between them. Obiajili looked around nervously. Ngozi, are you sure about this plan? Chidi is powerful and dangerous. If he finds out what you're doing, Ngozi interrupted gently but firmly. He already destroyed me once, Obi. What more can he do? This time I'm ready for him. Obiagili's eyes filled with both admiration and fear. You don't sound like the Ngozi I used to know. Ngozi smiled faintly, stirring her soup. I'm not her anymore. That Ngozi died the day Chidi mocked my parents. Back in Lagos, Chidi tried desperately to patch his collapsing empire. He threw lavish parties at expensive hotels, called in old favors from politicians, and reminded everyone of his wealth and connections. But the laughter at his events was hollow now, the smiles forced and fake. One night, a major investor cornered him at a party in Victoria Island. Okeke, I've been hearing troubling things. Fraud, misuse of company funds. If any of it is true, Chidi backed a loud laugh, cutting him off. Rumors. Lies spread by jealous rivals who can't stand my success. You think I would risk everything I've built? Please, don't insult me. But when the investor walked away looking unconvinced, Chidi's confident smile cracked like broken glass. Behind him, Amora whispered coldly in his ear, "They don't believe you anymore, Chidi. Your words are losing their power." Chidi turned on her sharply. "Then I'll make them believe. I always do." But the truth was already slipping through his fingers like sand, and he couldn't stop it no matter how hard he tried. The cracks in Chidi Okeke's empire widened like a river breaking through a dam. Investors pulled out one by one. Business partners in Abuja and Port Harcourt stopped returning his calls. The same people who once praised his brilliance now whispered about fraud, hidden deals, and debts buried in fake companies. Chidi slammed his fist on his mahogany desk one morning, scattering papers across his office floor. "They are vultures feeding on lies," he shouted. Amora Nwosu stood near the window of his Ikoyi mansion with a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't even flinch at his anger. "They are not lies, Chidi. They are just truths you've hidden for too long. And truths always come back to the surface eventually." He glared at her with fury in his eyes. "You think you know me?" She sipped her wine slowly. "I know enough. And I know this. You need me more than ever now. Without me, you're finished." Chidi grabbed her arm roughly, pulling her close. "Don't forget who made you. Without me, you're nothing." Amora pulled free from his grip, her eyes cold as ice. "No, Chidi. Without me, you have no one left to lie for you." For the first time in years, real fear rippled through Chidi's chest. He tried to push it down, but it stayed there, growing stronger. Meanwhile, Ngozi sat in Chief Emeka's office in Enugu, surrounded by stacks of documents spread across a wide table. Bank statements, forged signatures, contracts that had been manipulated. Chief Emeka tapped his finger on one particular file. "Here's proof Chidi stole money from investors. Here he forged signatures on contracts. And look at this one. He paid off auditors to cover his tracks and hide his crimes." Ngozi read the papers with steady, unwavering eyes. All this time, he pretended to be a man of honor and power. But he's just a thief wearing expensive clothes. Chief Emeka nodded slowly. "And he's been careless. Greed makes men sloppy. We have enough evidence to destroy him completely." Ngozi leaned back in her chair, her mind working carefully. "Not yet. If I strike too soon, he'll find a way to escape. I want everyone in Nigeria to see him for who he truly is. The timing has to be absolutely perfect." Chief Emeka studied her face carefully. "You've changed, Ngozi. The girl who came to me weeks ago was broken and lost. But now," he smiled faintly, "now you remind me of your grandfather. Strong and wise." Ngozi's throat tightened with emotion. "I wish he were here to see this." Chief Emeka's voice was soft. "He is here, my daughter. Every choice you make now, every step you take, he prepared you for this moment." That night, Ngozi sat alone in her small room. Through the window, The lights of Enugu twinkled in the distance. She opened her journal and began to write with a steady hand. Chidi wanted to break me. He wanted me to bow down, to hide in shame, to carry the disgrace he created. But he doesn't understand something important. I carry my parents' strength inside me. Their dignity, their honor, their love. He can mock poverty all he wants, but he can never mock real love. She paused, staring at the words she had written. Then she underlined the last sentence twice with her pen. Days turned into weeks. Chidi fought harder and harder, throwing even more expensive parties to prove his wealth still existed. He arranged interviews with journalists to spin his version of the story. But the more he struggled and fought, the more desperate and guilty he looked to everyone watching. Behind closed doors, his perfect mask was cracking and falling apart. In one tense meeting, a board member slammed a financial report on the conference table. This doesn't add up, Okeke. Millions of naira are missing from the accounts. Where did all that money go? Chidi sneered at the board member with contempt. Are you accusing me of stealing? The board member stood up slowly, his voice firm and final. I'm telling you this. Unless you can explain where that money went, I'm pulling out. And so are all the others. When the man stormed out of the room, Chidi sank into his leather chair, sweat beading on his forehead. He stared at his reflection in the glass wall of his office. For the first time, he didn't see the untouchable billionaire everyone feared. He saw a cornered man with nowhere left to run. Then the invitation arrived. It came in a golden envelope, hand-delivered by a courier to Chidi's mansion. He opened it and read the bold letters embossed in gold. Okeke Industries Gala. A night of triumph and renewal. Chidi's lips curved into a smile. This was his chance to show the world he was still standing strong. He would prove to everyone that the rumors and gossip meant nothing. But what Chidi didn't know was that Ngozi had orchestrated everything. She had made sure the invitation reached him. She wanted him on that stage, in front of everyone, when the truth finally came out. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom in Victoria Island was even more magnificent than the wedding venue. Silver chandeliers sparkled above tables lined with crystal glasses and golden plates. Cameras flashed as reporters pressed against velvet ropes, eager to capture every moment. Chidi stood at the center of it all, dressed in a flawless black tuxedo, his trademark smile plastered on his face. Beside him stood Amora in a stunning red gown, her arm looped through his. To anyone watching, they looked like the perfect power couple, untouchable and unbreakable. But underneath his smile, Chidi's heart raced with panic. He raised his champagne glass high, the lights catching the diamond cufflinks on his wrist. Ladies and gentlemen, he began smoothly, I stand before you tonight, not as a man defeated, but as a man renewed. Betrayal struck my life, yes, but I have risen stronger. And tonight I assure you all, the Okeke name remains untouchable. The crowd clapped politely, though many exchanged uncertain glances. Then something shifted. The chandeliers dimmed. The music stopped completely. A hush swept through the room as a single spotlight lit the grand entrance. And there she stood. Ngozi is. She walked into the ballroom with steady, confident steps. Her gown was a shimmering midnight blue that flowed behind her like a river of stars. Her hair was swept back elegantly, her face calm and radiant with power. Gone was the timid bride who had fled in tears. Tonight she looked like a queen returning to reclaim her throne. Gasps filled the room. Reporters surged forward. Cameras flashed wildly like lightning. Chidi's smile vanished completely. His grip on his glass tightened until tiny cracks appeared. What is she doing here? He hissed under his breath. Amora's hand slipped from his arm, her eyes wide with shock. You said she was gone forever. You said she'd never dare show her face again. Ngozi walked straight past the tables, past the shocked whispers, until she reached the stage. She didn't rush. She didn't stumble. Every step echoed with quiet, undeniable power. The event host fumbled with the microphone uncertainly, but Ngozi calmly took it from his hands. She turned to face the audience, her voice clear and sharp enough to cut through steel. "You mocked the parents who gave me everything money cannot buy," she said, her gaze locked on Chidi like a laser. "You betrayed me with lies, with cruelty, and even my own cousin helped you hide your sins. But tonight, all of Nigeria will know the truth about who you really are." The room froze completely. Chidi's face went pale as a ghost. "Don't listen to her," he barked desperately, forcing a fake laugh. "She's bitter. Abandoned. Unstable." But Ngozi raised her hand calmly, silencing him with just a gesture. "No, Chidi. You don't get to speak anymore. Not tonight." She gestured toward the giant screen behind her. A video flickered to life, showing Chidi at his own wedding with the microphone in hand, sneering cruelly. Rags for clothes, scraps for shoes. What a disgrace. The ballroom gasped in horror. Then came more evidence. Emails proving he planned the humiliation. Bank records showing fraud and theft. Recordings of him bragging about his crimes. One by one, the truths destroyed him. Investors stood and left in anger. Amora walked away without looking back. Chidi fell to his knees on the stage, broken and alone. Ngozi looked down at him without pity. A man who builds his life on lies will always be buried by them. Respect is worth more than all your wealth. And you, Chidi Okeke, have neither. She set the microphone down and walked toward her parents, Samuel and Patience, who stood waiting with tears of pride in their eyes. The crowd parted as Ngozi walked out with them, her head held high, leaving Chidi kneeling alone in his shattered empire.